Jobless claims. Well, they just a bonus 3 million people just signed up for unemployment, which is literally 1% of the population and about 2 or 2.5% of the labor force, which is uh, a large number, a very large number. Let's get into it. Americans displaced by the coronavirus crisis filed unemployment claims in record numbers last week, with the Labor Department reporting Thursday a surge to 3.28 million. The number shatters the Great Depression peak of 665,000. Now, while I'm doing the story, can someone really quick tell me the difference in population so we can get a ratio on that from then to now?
What year? Like 1929?
Sure. Well, 1929, how many people there were there? Divide by 665, and then the equivalent from now. It still seems like if my mental math is right, it's going to be about twice as much per person, or around that, maybe 1.5, which is nuts. Absolutely nuts. The previous week, which reflected the period from the worst coronavirus hit, was 282,000, which was higher than expected at the time. That's not good because usually Wall Street's like, oh, we kind of expect these things. The fact that, and you'll see in a second, let me hold that thought until I get to it. Consensus estimates from economists surveyed by Dow Jones showed an expectation for 1.5 million new claims. So it was actually twice as bad. We're talking in like late
22.8 million population. Sorry. 1929 population was approximately 122.9 million.
So it's about half as much, a little bit less than half, like 40% as much. But look at that, it's like 5 times difference. That's like, so it's twice as much. So it's twice as bad roughly accounting for a person to person. That's nuts. So the Dow Jones, they thought it would be like, it's going to be 1.5 million people. So they literally were off by like 100%. This would be like a poll going, Bernie Sanders will probably win by, 10 points, and he wins by 20. That's enormous. That is so off. That's like a margin of error of 100% that they were off by. Though individual forecasts on Wall Street had been anticipating a much higher number, the surge, actually, can you scroll up a little bit onto that? Look at that line. Yeah. Look at that goddamn blue line. If you think it's the end of the graph.
That's what I thought it was. I actually thought it was the end of the graph. I was like, wait, where is it?
Yeah. This is the start of everything collapsing. I mean, it's like awe-inspiring. It's like I keep talking about that tsunami in 2006. It's like, imagine like standing in front of a 60-foot tsunami just barreling towards you, and it's like, oh my God. So though individual forecasts are the surge comes among crippling slowdown brought by the coronavirus. That's why I've been saying that it's like, I kind of get like the way the Republicans are dealing with just all the old people should die. That's the way to do it. It's like, obviously that's horrible and that's not the right way to do it. But more people are going to die from the depression that is caused by coronavirus than coronavirus itself. We're going to literally have hundreds of thousands of Americans that might starve depending on what the government does. Are we going to go into a Hoover way of doing it with their wonderful Hoover houses and Hoover blankets? And for those of you that don't know, those are like tents and like newspapers. Or are we going to do something about all this? Because if same old that America's ever done, except for when FDR was in charge, happens, we're looking at probably over 100,000 Americans in the next couple of years dying of starvation, which is just absolutely insane. But yeah, so this is the start. This is it. So now you have all these people and this is now we're in this wonderful chain of events, which is people get laid off. Demand goes down because no one could buy anything because they're laid off. So what happens as a result? Well, now you don't need as much supply. Retail places, restaurants don't need as many servers because there's less demand. They don't need as many people to make manufactured goods, or retail clerks aren't needed as much, so they get laid off. They go back over to here. Now there's more people that are laid off and the demand is even lower. So all you start doing is get this terrible tornado of just decreasing demand that happens, and you need government action to save it. Now we're at a spot where there's like 2 directions, well, 3 directions. You can have just the country, there you go, Freudian slip, just implode entirely, end of the U.S., which won't happen. You can either do a Green New Deal or something equivalent to that, get the people back working, get money spending, then everything kind of rebound. That tornado of terrible goes the other direction, or you can just get a feudal kingdom set up and just have your peasants do whatever you tell them to do.
Okay, Daniel, this is not Bretonia. We're not going to go to. We're not going to go that far. We're not going to regress that far. But
modern equivalent.
Yeah, I do think that we, just looking at this crisis that's happening. I was talking to my grandfather about this, and all what he said to me really is, "Yeah, I've seen this before." Basically, this wasn't his first rodeo. He's just like, "Yeah, I've seen this before. It's not going to be pretty, and it won't be pretty. It'll be difficult seeing families out there in the streets. It's going to be difficult seeing people dying out there in the streets. These are things that my grandpa saw as a kid: people starving, people homeless, people dead on the streets. This is a real thing. Here in the United States, we're going to see this: a rich and powerful country. We have money for endless wars and tax breaks for corporations, but we're not doing anything for our people. And this COVID-19." It's going to continue to spread. The economy will continue to collapse unless we have real leadership. This is the danger that we are in, and we have to step up to fight for it, fight for a better future.
So one of the things that comes to mind to me is like 30% unemployment, rising jobless claims, market in free fall or near free fall. These are the conditions that are rife for revolution, right? I mean, even though if we're amid a sort of a public health crisis, as things develop, as things likely get worse before they get better, we'll start having some real coalescence around some strong advocates for people's needs, for restructuring what our economy looks like, and not allowing a bunch of companies that basically only exist to siphon off value from the rest of society. Maybe those aren't things that deserve government favors. Maybe we need to talk about restructuring some things.
This is the sort of time period where people are willing to do a lot that they wouldn't have done just a few weeks ago. And sadly, and we've seen this, there's people like us, there's people like our wonderful audience and our patrons and everyone else who we've gotten this, we've seen the system, we know that this was going to happen, we knew that this collapse was imminent, that the structure, the way that the country works in and of itself is flawed in such a way that it needs to be redone. And in 16 and the most of the election in 20, the best we can get out of people was, hey, go vote for this person here and there. But to Paul's point, when we do it now, when people are out of work, they have no hope, they have nothing to do, this is another historical consistency. People have two choices. They can either go right or they can go left. And it's up to us, as this continues to unfold, to make sure that people go left and not right. Because as much as things are going to be terrible and there's going to be a lot of loss, it's like a cleansing fire if you look at it, and if you decide to look at it that way, where you can lay a new layer of fertile soil on the ground where new things can grow up and make a new forest. And it's like, this is going to happen. This wasn't our fault. We tried to say this was happening. You guys, the same exact thing. It's the people in charge that allowed this to happen in the first place. It's the people in charge for 60 years that have put the system together and said, we have it, we got it, nothing can go wrong, shut up. You're un-American if you even challenge the idea that this is a good system. Now we can, and a lot of people, sadly, just will parrot whatever they're told. And even, I'm sure in the same way, if we became super popular and were listened to by millions and millions of people, there would be a subset of the audience that would do the same with us. But that group of people, they're going to change their minds when they don't have paychecks. And we need to be ready for that.
Yeah.
One last final note too. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that the system's failing. You did everything right. It is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. It's our leadership that failed. And we must continue to step forward. And know this, we will get out of this crisis.